Why are you here? What are you doing? What is it all about? These are questions from the movie F1 with Brad Pitt. It's an awesome movie. We're going to unpack the movie and those questions and how they relate to our own lives. Unpack it with us next. Welcome to the Unpacking It podcast, where we unpack parallels, metaphors, and topics in sports and movies that relate to life and faith. I'm Bryce Johnson in downtown Mount Holly, just outside of Charlotte, North Carolina, joined by my co-host in studio, Trip Smith. On today's episode, we are unpacking F1, the movie. This is a fun summer sports movie. Came out last year, 2025, and it was the first time I've seen it. So excited to share my reactions to this movie. Tripp has seen it a couple times, so we'll hear his thoughts and some of the storylines around this movie and some of the conversations around it, but also the sport of F1, Formula One racing, which is interesting. And so curious, your thoughts. Have you seen this movie? And what did you think of it? And then maybe by the end of this conversation, you will be intrigued to go watch it tonight. And so I will warn you, it is long. So we'll have to talk about that as well. How long is a good movie? What do we like lengthwise? So we'll talk about that. Do encourage you to check out our website, unpackingit.com. And then also, this time of year, we are gearing up for Fantasy Football Fellowship. And so the podcast is underway. Hopefully you have subscribed to the podcast. Fantasy Football Fellowship comes out weekly. Trip and I, we're talking fantasy, faith, and life. And then also we encourage you and your league to join Fantasy Football Fellowship and all season long experience the weekly breakouts where we take a fantasy concept related to the Bible, related to life, and it's designed for you and your league to discuss the weekly topic together during a league meeting. And so it can be your current league, start a new league, start a league at your church. Find out more, fantasyfootballfellowship.com. One other thing to mention, and then we'll jump in. I want to thank our sponsor, Upward Sports, and hopefully you enjoyed watching the World Cup. I know the ratings were unbelievable. The game on Sunday, a little bit of a letdown, but it seems like the overall experience for soccer fans, football fans, they love the World Cup. Congrats to Spain. But Upward Sports, they run wonderful leagues for youth, and soccer leagues are one of their really bread and butter. And so if you got kind of excited about soccer this season and want to see your kids participate in soccer, check out Upward Sports. And then also, if you want to start a league at your church, be sure to check out upward.org/soccer. And if you end up starting a league, they will actually get you started with 2 goals, 2 free goals. And so that'll help get the league going. And so encourage you to reach out to the Upward team and learn more at upward.org/soccer. All right, Trip. For the first time on this show, the word F1 has been mentioned. We are talking Formula One racing, but specifically F1, the movie. Thanks for the recommendation. It was a wonderful movie. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I love this movie, man. I mean, we'll get into all of the reasons that I love this movie, but I really think it is one of the great sports movies of the last few years, maybe the last decade. And you wouldn't think F1. I mean, I had a hard time thinking, are there other great racing sports movies? I think a lot of people loved Ford versus Ferrari that came out about 6 or 7 years ago.
Have you seen that one? I haven't seen that.
I have not seen it, but I've heard that it's really good. And after watching this movie, I went ahead and put it on the list because I do want to watch it now and see some of that history between those two brands and on like the racing scene. Obviously, Talladega Nights, probably the greatest sports racing movie of all time. No,
Days of Thunder. Days of Thunder is a favorite for many.
Okay, you're right. Yeah, that is it. I forgot
Tom
about
Cruise.
Days of Thunder. Yeah.
It used to be a great ride. We have an amusement park here in Charlotte called Carowinds. It used to be Days of Thunder. Like, it was an indoor immersive ride.
Yeah.
Did you ever ride that? It was cool.
I don't think I ever did.
Yeah,
No, I never did it. And I think there was one with Chris Hemsworth that came out a few years ago that I saw that was a good racing movie. But I love this movie. I'm a big fan of Brad Pitt, and I love the sort of the arc of his career and what he has become, sort of as like elder statesman among leading men. You know, so there's a lot that I love about this movie. I will say I turned back on my Apple TV subscription to watch this movie.
Yeah, me too.
And then started getting presented with all of the real F1 events. And my boys are really into real F1.
Oh, they are. They already know about it.
Some of the technical aspect of that is really, one of my sons has kind of engineer's brain. And so he thinks that kind of some of the technical behind the scenes stuff is really interesting. And as I've learned more about not just the individual races that are happening on the track, but sort of the narrative of every season, stuff that's happening off the track and with points scored and behind the scenes, helps you understand this movie a little bit better and kind of what's going on between the races, reading between the lines, so to speak. But I really, really enjoyed this movie. I'll say I had a great movie weekend because I also went to see The Odyssey, Christopher Nolan's new Odyssey movie. So I had nigh on 6 hours of movie watching this weekend. Was it the best use of my time? Arguably, no. But did I enjoy every minute of it? Yes, I really, really did. And this is a great film. I'm excited to talk to you about it.
Yes. So we have to talk about it. This was a 2-hour, 45-minute movie, which is long.
Yeah.
To me,
too long?
145 to 2, that's a little better for me. So I watched this past midnight. So I was dedicated to finishing this movie Sunday night, but Jody had to go to bed. She missed the ending, and I mentioned something about the ending yesterday. She's like, "Oh, come on, don't spoil it.
Don't tell me." She wants to watch it. Yeah.
So I don't want to spoil the movie because I think people should enjoy this movie if you haven't yet. But we'll talk about kind of the general concepts from it. But really, the big takeaway, I think, for me as someone that went into this not knowing anything about Formula One, never really watched a race. When I used to have this radio show on Sirius XM, F1 would always bump us. So I started to not like F1.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I was like, man, every Sunday they keep bumping us. So that was a bummer. But I really appreciated the way this movie was filmed. And this was a $200 or $300 million budget. They ended up making $600 million. So it was well worth the investment. But they invested in making this very realistic. They were really driving for a lot of it.
Yeah, you could tell that it was really Brad Pitt in the driver's seat there.
Real cars, real drivers. And then to me, the sound, and I noticed it early in the movie, the music, the soundtrack was great, but then also just the sound. And then come to find out, it won an Oscar for best sound.
Yeah.
So it was legit. So I didn't watch it in surround sound. I don't really have surround sound, but I would recommend that. And then people that saw it in the IMAX must have loved it because it's very appealing visually and audibly.
It's immersive. It is an immersive movie. And if you saw it in IMAX, I mean, it's like you are in the cockpit. You're in the driver's seat for so much of it. And it's showing the quick glances that the driver takes from side to side as he's maneuvering between other drivers. And it really does. There is an intensity to the racing in this movie that I don't think that I've really experienced in any other racing movie that I have seen. You feel like you are in there, and you can see it is the real actors who are on some of these scenes. They're driving the car. I'm sure there's some green screen work and some CGI that's being done so that they're not surrounded by a dozen other F1 cars. But it's super cool visually and very immersive from kind of a whole experience perspective.
Well, a couple of weeks ago on the show, I made it clear that I don't necessarily enjoy watching actual sports action in a movie, like fake sports action. But because I didn't know anything about F1, I loved this action.
Yeah.
I couldn't get enough of it. Going into the movie, knowing it was 2 hours and 45 minutes, I thought to myself, well, maybe I'll just fast forward through some of the action, like the actual racing.
Yeah.
I couldn't turn away. I loved it. It was fantastic. So the intensity, the tension, and Brad Pitt's character, Sonny, just all the shenanigans that he was up to, you couldn't turn away from it. It was fun.
I mean, the wily veteran versus young and kind of up and coming star dynamic is always good in a movie,
Always good.
but this is about as good as I have seen in any sports movie. And I will say, the other thing that I just love the cast of this movie, really from top to bottom. I mean, Brad Pitt is like obviously all-time sort of leading man, A-list actor, but the younger driver, Jonathan Pierce, played by Damson Idris, Damson, I think is the way you say his first name.
He was
Idris.
great.
I think he's really cool.
Yeah.
He's kind of an up-and-coming actor. But then Javier Bardem, I absolutely love him as the role of the team owner here. I just think
he was awesome.
He gives a great performance. And then Carrie Condon, I was like, what have I seen her in? She has this incredible Irish accent. And I'm like, what have I seen her in? Why do I like her so much? And I realized she's the voice of Friday, Tony Stark's suit AI in all of the Marvel Avengers movies. And she's got that great Irish accent and kind of that snarky, like she's really good at these kind of sharp one-liners, which she's great at in this movie as well. And so, I mean, the whole cast is really, really well done. It's just an enjoyable, you feel like you were a part of the Apex GP team, and it's an enjoyable team to be a part of as they grow and gel as a unit. That's one of the great secondary plots of this movie, is how Brad Pitt's sort of antics bring together this team until they're one of the top performing teams by the end of the season. So yeah, there's so much that I liked about this, about the story here.
Now, some of the criticism, but it's also, you just embrace it as a moviegoer, is that yes, they played some of the hits in regards to the underdog story,
right?
Last to first type of movie, the tension between, like you mentioned, the old and the new, but all of that works. It's
right.
good. We like it.
That's exactly right.
We like it in real sports. We like it in sports movies. It's just part of the deal. But to me, there were plenty of surprises in the movie.
Yeah.
So I won't spoil all of those, but I was caught off guard and thought, oh, well, now we're going this direction. And then we quickly reared back, the other way. So that made it fun. It was a fun adventure. It really was. It was not a slow movie, very fast paced. And so again, I mentioned the time. It didn't drag on.
Yeah.
Was it long? Yeah, because it's a time commitment, but it did not drag on. It was cool.
I'd say that, I mean, there's really no boring scene in this movie. Every scene, whether it's on or off the racetrack, is engaging because of some of the just the rapport between the actors in this movie. I mean, even the relationship stuff is really, really engaging. And I will say, I mean, so to your point, one of the reasons I think that we love sports movies is because we want the story of the underdog who comes through with the dramatic victory at the end. I would say that is hardwired into us by God. And there's nothing more frustrating than when you watch a sports movie that does that in sort of a bad, hokey, ham-fisted way. But when you see a movie that gives you everything that you want and pulls it off so perfectly the way that this movie does, we love that. We really enjoy that. And again, without spoiling the ending, what I love about this movie is that it does sort of take an unexpected route to get there. I mean, it is realistic in the sense that if you watch real F1, pretty much every season in F1, you know who the best teams and the best drivers are from the beginning of the season. And it's kind of the same crew of about a half dozen drivers. And I mean, the Ferrari team, for instance, is always good. They're just always at the top. I think it's the McLaren team that's always just really, really good. And there are just some teams like Apex GP at the beginning of this movie that are never going to finish near the top, that are never really going to score points. And so the point that the argument that Brad Pitt makes to Kate early in this movie, we don't have the car to beat these guys in straight speed, and so we've got to build our car for combat, is just, it's so great, because it's like, how is this underdog team going to win? It's going to take wily tactics from this experienced driver mixed with a car that is built for chaos and combat. And you think that that's the way that the movie is going. And then the ending is just such a perfect kind of subversion of your expectation at the end. And I mean, I don't really care that much about driving, but I get tears in my eyes at the end of this movie because of just how pitch perfect I think that the ending is. And so, yeah, you're right. 2 hours and 40 minutes long. I'll say, when I went to see The Odyssey, it's a good movie, but there were times where I was like, man, I feel like I am just getting pummeled by this movie. It is so long and so kind of heavy. Whereas, yeah, you turn on F1 and it's over before you know it. It drives forward quickly and enjoyably throughout the film. So yeah, I'd recommend it to anybody who's thinking about watching this movie.
I'm curious though, how long does an actual F1 race last?
I don't think it's this long. The races they vary in length, so it's not the same number of laps at every
couple hours long.
I feel like from start to finish, maybe 2 hours. I mean, maybe less than that. So I haven't watched a ton of F1, but I don't remember sitting there watching a race for 3. It's not like NASCAR where you're watching 500 laps or whatever for 4 hours. It's usually 100 laps or less, and less than 2 hours, I think.
Okay.
Probably a true F1 fan out there may call me on that. I think it varies pretty widely from kind of race to race and location to location. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting how this movie picks up on some of the true F1 themes and kind of subverts your expectation to make for an enjoyable sports movie. And I just think, to your point, most movies should not be this long.
Probably not. But this was
when you see one where you're like, wow, that flew by, and I enjoyed it from start to finish.
I do think it almost could have been a TV show, like a 10 episode or 8 episode maybe, and you could have extended a couple of the storylines. I think that could have been possible.
Yeah,
but this was a big movie theater hit all around the world. I mean, this is Brad Pitt's highest grossing movie, which I don't know how they do that nowadays if you factor in streaming and stuff. Yeah. But to think that throughout his career, this is the one, that's wild to me because he's been in some other big movies. But with that said, is this your favorite Brad Pitt movie? And here's a hot take from me. I like Brad Pitt. I don't like his movies. I don't watch his movies normally. So this is one of 3 movies that I can say that I've seen and liked.
When you say you like him, then what is it that you're? What do you like?
Well, I loved Moneyball. We did that show a couple years ago here on Unpacking It. So we talked about Moneyball. So if you missed that one, that's a good one. The movie and the episode. And then all the Oceans movies. He was great. So I love his character in
Fight Club
in those. I'm not Mr. Fight Club guy, but I saw that. I think I fell asleep though. I know people will roll their eyes on that one, but
that's a culturally significant movie that I actually don't. It's not a movie that I enjoy, and I recognize the sort of historical significance of it. But it's not a movie that makes you feel good.
No,
and you can fall asleep in it. It's actually, in spite of kind of what you think of it as, it's kind of a slow movie.
I think I did. I'm not even sure if I finished it or what. But so those are the only ones I've seen, I think.
I love Brad Pitt.
Meet Joe Black. Is that a movie?
Meet Joe Black was one of his early movies when he was kind of the young kind of heartthrob. I mean, so what I love about Brad Pitt is that
tell us, Trip.
He exudes this sort of complete confidence in who he is as an actor, and he has been able to transition that through each sort of like stage in his career. And I love what how old is Brad Pitt? I love what he is doing.
I'm going to guess 55.
His birthday is 1963. So 53 years old. And as he has sort of become this older kind of grizzled,
no, he's 62.
Okay. Right.
The math
was wrong. Yeah.
That was tough.
I was told there would be no math.
Yeah,
he's 63, 62. So he'll be 63 this December. Okay. That makes more sense. Yeah. So he's in his 60s. Obviously he's good looking for a 60-something-year-old man, but I love how he has sort of embraced this. Bryce, I can tell you get uncomfortable every time I talk about how charismatic and good-looking Brad Pitt is. I'm so secure in my heterosexuality that I have no problem saying that he's a great-looking man.
I'm more of a George Clooney guy, but that's fine.
Okay,
that's fine.
I'll just say, I think that he plays the experienced, grizzled, slightly traumatized. That is, he has experienced some hurt and some shame in this movie, and yet he manages to end up being a mentor to the younger driver and to this team. And I just think he plays that pitch perfectly in this movie. Probably my favorite Brad Pitt movie that earns its strong R rating is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood that he did with Quentin Tarantino. That's another one of these movies where he's over 60 in that movie. Or he's coming up on 60 in that movie, and he just plays this kind of has-been Hollywood stuntman, and it is just a perfect role, and he is so funny in it. But Yeah, I think that he's great, man. And there are very few movies that I have seen him in that I haven't enjoyed. It'd be fun to make a top 5 Brad Pitt list. But this would probably be in my top 5. I really love him in this movie.
I will go Ocean's 11.
He's great in the Ocean's movies.
Moneyball, and then F1. So those are the ones.
Love Moneyball. Yeah, that might be close to the list for me too. Yeah. But I just enjoy him in everything that he's in, and I think he's great in this. But again, I think it's the supporting cast that's alongside him in this movie that really makes it. He's charismatic enough to at least be engaging on screen and sort of carry a movie by himself. But this wouldn't be the great movie that it is if it weren't for Javier Bardem, if it weren't for the great performance from Damson Idris, if it weren't for some of the characters that are around him. So I enjoy his interplay with the whole cast.
I like it. It's a good breakdown. No, it really is. It's well acted. All the elements that you want in a big time summer sports movie, it's got it. And so here's how Apple TV describes the movie. Racing legend Sonny Hayes is coaxed into leading a struggling Formula One team and mentoring a young hotshot driver while chasing one last chance at redemption. And so let's dive into the parallel for us today and kind of want to take you through this movie. And if you want to mention and talk about any of these specific scenes at all. But basically, Sonny Hayes is Brad Pitt, and so he's convinced to return to F1 after 30 years out of the sport, which is, I think, in some ways unbelievable. But this isn't a true story, but it is loosely, they pull from different stories over the years. So I guess it's not totally outrageous, but the idea of a 60-some-year-old participating in F1, I think, is a little outrageous because of the physical toll that it takes. I was reading a little bit about that. But he plays it off, to your point, his ability to do that. But I guess just a side question, what sport would you love to see somebody come back after 20 years, 30 years to just appear again and give it one more try? Oh, it's got to be golf. I think golf is the one that, like, you think about somebody that maybe faded out early in their career in their 20s maybe, and we're like, oh man, it's going to be awesome. And then they come back in their 50s and win a tournament. That would be cool to me. And I think that's somewhat believable.
Yeah, for sure. Golf lends itself to that, right? I mean, probably the most emotional that I've ever been in any sports victory that I have ever witnessed was Tiger Woods coming back to win the Masters after so many years of just pain. That was
2019.
Or 20. No, I think that was after COVID. It was more recent than that, was it not? We can look that up. But I mean, that was the most emotional that I've ever felt about sort of a comeback athlete. But there are sports where it's possible to do that. Like you see guys playing into their later 30s, and even guys in golf, they can play to their 40s, 50s, 60s. Baseball, you can play until you're a little bit older. Obviously, football, you're just not going to see we'll never see something like what we saw with like Tom Brady, for instance. I just don't think that you're going to see a guy who plays that late into his career, and is successful like that, pulls off the major championship victory. Rodgers is making a push to play late, but it's not on the same level, right?
No.
I just don't. Football doesn't lend itself to that.
On a side note, sorry, I saw Aaron Rodgers reconciled with most of his family. It's a great story.
Okay,
so then we have to.
I'd like to hear more about that. We do need to. I haven't seen that. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's interesting. All right, I read it this morning. I go, wow.
Can I tell you,
that's awesome.
As someone who hasn't been a big fan of Aaron Rodgers lately, that does move the needle for me in terms of making me feel that's a feel-good story. I want to hear more about that. Tee that up for a future conversation. Yeah, what early on in this movie, early on in F1, they talk about some of the historic drivers that came back and won later in their career. And I think the oldest driver they name is 51 years old or something like that. I can't remember if it was Senna or if it's another driver that they name, but what I would imagine is true. In fact, I can say this with a pretty high degree of certainty, is that the intensity of these cars in the year 2026 compared to what F1 cars were like in 1976 is such that like the demand on the body and the level of athleticism that it takes to drive one of these cars nowadays, what I imagine it probably took to drive one of these cars 50 years ago, I can see how it would be a sport that an older man, just his body would not be able to hold up over the course of a whole season. I mean, you see some of the training that the younger driver is doing early on in the movie. especially some of the core and neck strength stuff where you're like, yeah, I just can't imagine going around one of these turns and, like the core strength that it would take to just sit upright in one of these cars would be amazing. So yeah, not an older man's sport, apparently.
I went kayaking over the weekend. Just sitting in a kayak was tough enough on the back.
You know how Brad Pitt feels. Yeah, you know how he feels in this movie. That's right, man.
It seems like it's apples to apples.
It's the core that goes first, Bryce. Yeah,
absolutely. But that was funny because Brad Pitt was doing like to help his hand-eye coordination. He was throwing tennis balls up against the wall. And then the young guy was doing all sorts of fancy workouts.
I did like the old school versus new school, like the old school versus high-tech training dynamic of this movie is pretty cool.
Brad Pitt was just out there running.
Just running on the track.
Normal run. So then throughout the movie, there are some cool like relational dynamics and just thematic tensions that are in this movie. And so there's a lot of different things we could talk about that parallel our own lives. But there was this one thread that started early in the movie and went all the way through until the end. And that's what I want to hone in on today, looking at it from the movie perspective, but then translating it into our own lives. But it is the questions that were asked that were rooted in motivation and purpose. And in our own lives, we know that this is such a big deal. It's something that we either do think about all the time or need to think about more. But in this movie, here's where it started, because it was kind of a cool scene when the owner of this F1 team, who's Brad's former teammate, he shows up asking him to be a part of his team. He needs them. So they're out to breakfast or lunch or whatever.
He's wearing his Gucci suit, and they're in the truck stop, just the grungy truck stop
diner,
roadside diner.
Delicious spot.
That whole scene in their conversation is great.
And so the owner leaves, and Sonny's now contemplating what to do. And so he asks the waitress, and he tells her it's not about the money. And she asks, so what is it about? And at this point, he just goes, and there's no answer. And so it's just sort of this kind of question, like, what is it about? Like, what would drive him to actually say yes and go do this? So we're starting to wonder about that. And then he ends up saying yes. He goes, joins the team. In the first race, he's sitting in his car, and he asks himself, what are you doing here, Sonny? And so that caught my attention. And then later on, where now we start to get a little bit of a romantic relationship going on, but Sonny, he sits down with the team's technical director, and that's Kate McKenna. That's her name in the movie. And in one scene, she asks him, why did Sonny Hayes come back to F1? So again, we're wondering, what is this? What is his motivation? So he doesn't answer her at that point. But then later in the movie, she asks him again, why are you here, Sonny? Huh? And so he ends up describing his love for racing, the experience he has while racing, and really described when he's really in the zone. And he gives this great picture of, everything kind of blocks out, and he feels like he's flying. And so that's what he loves about racing. And so what was fascinating is he's out of F1 for 30 years, but at one point he finally realizes, I got to get back into racing. And so he just says yes to any race he could get during that time. And so he's doing all these small races, barely making any money, makes it clear it's not about money. And then he ends up telling her too, he goes, didn't matter the car, the circuit, didn't need anyone to watch. Just as long as I was behind the wheel, I was good. And so this is sort of, we're now understanding, kind of what he's all about, and he just loves racing. And then now the tension between him and this young driver that is on his team that he's supposed to mentor, but there's tension between the two. He asks Joshua Pierce, why do you race? And initially Joshua goes, money, fame, free clothes. Just kind of your typical 20-some-year-old, like loving the hype and the fame and all that kind of stuff. But then as the movie goes on, we see the influence that Sonny is having on him. Their relationship starts to develop in a positive way. And it seems like things finally click for Joshua because he realizes it's not about all that other stuff, the media, the sponsors, the fans. And so he tells his managers, that's not why I'm doing it, right? And so he says no to a media appearance. That's not why I'm doing it, right? And so he just wants to focus on racing. And then let me give two more scenes, and then we'll let Tripp respond here. And so Sonny ends up getting into a wreck during the season, and then his buddy Ruben, the owner, asks him in the hospital, "Why do we do this?" He's sitting looking at his buddy who's injured just off a nasty crash, going, "Why do we do this?" And then in the final scene after the F1 season is over, I'm not going to tell you how it ended, but we see Sonny finding some other random race, no longer in F1. He's in the middle of a desert. We don't even really know what's going on, but this guy, he goes, "Hey, have you ever driven Baja?" And Sonny goes, "Nope." And the guy goes, "We can't pay much." And Sonny goes, "Not about the money." And the guy goes, "So what is it about?" And so as you can
fade to black. I mean, that's the end of the movie. Yeah. Leaves you there. I love that.
That's it. So these are the questions throughout the whole movie. I don't know if you noticed it as you were watching, but it was just sort of this, what is it about? Why are you here? What are you doing? And purpose, motivation was just sort of this underlying trying to figure it out and trying to understand it as we're watching it.
Yeah, this was the second time that I had watched this movie. And the first time that I watched the movie, possibly my favorite scene of the whole movie is when Sonny and Kate are on the balcony together in Las Vegas and they're having that conversation. And he describes how he has basically been chasing that experience of sort of kind of flowing into the pure and perfect experience of just driving the car, and how for him, that's the thing that he loves. And it made me think of the line in Chariots of Fire, "When I run, I feel the pleasure of God," right? Kind of
famous.
Right. Famous movie and famous line from that movie where I can't remember the name of the character from Chariots of Fire, but the main character, I should know that. But he basically says, "When I'm doing this thing and I have that experience of doing it in kind of the purest way at the highest level, I experience something like the divine," right? And I love that scene where Sonny is describing that on the balcony. And so it was on this second viewing with that in mind, where I had the understanding, here's what he's all about, that I was able to pick up this is a recurring conversation. This is a thread that runs through the whole movie. What is it all about for you? What is it all about? That's what everyone keeps asking him. And there's only one time where he really even attempts to put it into words. And even when he does, he says, he kind of says, "You're going to think I'm crazy. This isn't going to make sense." He realizes he's grasping at it with words. And I think that there is something so beautiful about that. And at least for me, it resonates with me so deeply. This idea that he talks about. Another one of my favorite scenes in the movie is in the first press conference with the team, when that one sort of antagonistic journalist stands up and just reads him the lists of his failings through his life, not just as a driver, but as a multiple times divorced husband, as a gambler who went bankrupt. And it's only kind of in the third act of the movie that you realize, like, all of that was him trying to sort of self-medicate against this one thing that he loves and is seeking more than anything else. And his life just falling apart because he wasn't doing the one thing that he felt like he was made to do, right? And so that "what is it about" question, it's a beautiful thread that runs through this whole movie. And I think that I believe that for all of us made in the image of God, we have near the center of our hearts is sort of, what is it about for you? And when we really, truly discover and sort of touch that thing, we're coming close to touching something like the image of God in us, approaching kind of divinity, or the word that I would use for it would be glory.
That's right. And so, we're going to dive into all of that. And what's just the way that this movie ended is sort of how I want to start this conversation. But what is it all about? What is our life all about? And what was interesting in this movie is that you thought that Brad Pitt, or you thought that his character, it was about trying to prove that he could still race, or prove that he should have been, an F1 guy the whole time. But that really wasn't it. That, like, maybe it was, it's a movie, but that wasn't what they made it out to be. It made it out to be that he just loved racing. And that's what it was about. And like he said, it wasn't about the trophies and the accolades.
I mean, he literally gives the trophy to someone else at the end and leaves the party, right? So again, a little bit of a spoiler there. How it comes about, I won't. But he's not about the fame or the fortune of winning racing.
And so for us in our own lives, do we ever think about these questions? And when we do, what is our answer? And so just to think about these questions that were brought up in the movie, let's ask them and think about them in our own lives. Why are we here? Why do we do this? So what is it about? What are we doing here? So why are we here and what are we doing here? And I think there's multiple ways that you can answer these questions and think about it. And for us as followers of Jesus, I want it to be, very much rooted in this foundation of understanding why God created us as humans. And then I do think there is a layer that each of us can then go to that we can explore and discover our individual purpose and where we really just experience this wonderful peace and freedom that we're doing exactly what we feel like we're created to do. But we have to understand the first part first to really fully embrace the understanding of how God uniquely designed us. But for us, just to sort of give us a baseline, we have to go back to the reality that God created us, that he is the creator and that he created us for his purposes. And then he's given us incredible gifts to use for his glory. And so, the specifically spiritual gifts, but there are many, talents and skills that can also be a part of this conversation too, that he's given us. But they're not for us selfishly. They're not given to us for the accolades and the awards and the selfish ambition. That's not why we're designed that way. They're designed to serve others, to accomplish his purposes, to build his kingdom. And so if we get that off, we miss the mark in a big way. And then that's why we have so much tension in our lives and unsettledness and restlessness, I guess is the better word, that we have in our lives when that's the case. And again, he's designed us in unique ways, and he's then called us to live according to his word. And we talked a lot about that last week, but he's given us a way to live, and he leads and guides us day by day. But here are some verses to give us some context here. So in Isaiah 43:7, the Lord declares, "Bring all who claim me as their God, for I have made them for my glory. It was I who created them." In Feast. 1 Peter 4:10 states, "Each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others as faithful stewards of God's grace in its various forms." And then Ephesians 2:10, "For we are God's masterpiece. He has created us anew in Christ Jesus so we can do the good things he planned for us long ago." Lot here. Go whatever direction you want to go, Trip.
Yeah, I mean, so first, it's worth saying, just do you ever have that conversation with yourself and with your own heart and with the people who know you best of what is it all about? I sort of think that we all have that question reverberating inside of us, and maybe we are afraid of consciously thinking about it or explicitly talking about it with other people, because when you have experienced something like a taste of what Brad Pitt experiences in the very best moments of racing in this movie, and then you realize the frustration of living in a fallen world where most of the time that's not our experience, an immediate and intense connection with the thing that our life is most about, there can be real frustration and even sorrow in that, right? And so I think just to have the courage to ask the question, to recognize just because I'm not getting or I'm not experiencing what I think that my life is most about all the time doesn't mean that it isn't true, right? One of my favorite, there's a spiritual director named Ruth Haley Barton who says the truest things about us in this life are our unmet desires, right? That there's something about, in a broken world that's full of toil and frustration and sin, we only get little glimpses and little tastes of the thing that we're most made for. And so do you have the courage to ask the question and talk honestly about it? Now, I want to say, highlighted here, Bryce, what the Bible's answer is. The thing that you are most made for is the glory of God. He made us in his image and for his glory. I think that usually the place that we go first when we hear that I'm made for the glory of God is to sort of an instrumental understanding. I am made to give glory to him. I think it's actually true biblically that first and foremost, we are made to receive and enjoy his glory. Before we're ever made to return anything to him, we're made to receive his glory and to be satisfied in his glory. Glory is one of those Bible words that we hear so much that we don't really think about what it means, right? But often the way that glory is depicted in the Bible is with bright, unapproachable light. And just in the same way that you can shine pure white light through a prism and it refracts it into all of these different colors, right? The glory of God shining into Bryce versus the glory of God shining into Trip versus the glory of God shining into one of our listeners is going to refract in different ways, right? And so the context and the activities wherein we sort of experience that closeness to the glory of God are going to be different. And I would argue that in the same way that the runner from Chariots of Fire is made to glorify God through his running, and I really think Brad Pitt, not a believer in this F1 movie, right? But this sort of imaginary character feels that he is made to experience and give glory to God through pure and excellent racing, right?
He doesn't realize it, but
he doesn't realize it. He wouldn't put those words to it.
No.
But I would say this is not just for Christians, right? Every person made in the image of God is made to refract and reflect his glory. And even the most heinous sinner cannot help but reflect something about the glory of God. What is for Christians, what is for followers of Jesus, is the explicit recognition and the enjoyment of the fact that we are glorifying God. So we get the conscious enjoyment of saying, I'm made to give glory to him. And the way that I do that is through X, Y, and Z. There are some answers the Bible gives us where it says all people, all followers of Jesus are made to glorify God through worship, through reading his word, through prayer, through service, right? But then there are some things that apply particularly to each unique believer where you might glorify God in a way that's not quite the same as anyone else around you. And that probably is close to the center of the bullseye of what you feel that your life is all about. Because that's how he made us. That's how he wired us to find our fulfillment and our meaning in receiving his glory and reflecting it back to him. That's what it's about. I mean, that's what it's all about. It is
There's
deep.
a lot there.
When we start talking about the glory of God and the fact that we're made to glorify him, we are getting into some of the deepest waters of theology and meaning in the whole Bible. But I guess what I'm saying is I want to challenge us to go there, right? Just to have the courage to have those conversations. Sometimes you could spiral down into thinking about it all the time, and that might not be a good thing for you. One of my favorite pastors, John Piper, he's made to think explicitly about the glory of God and to theologize and to preach about it all the time. That's what his whole career has been. Others of us are made to have these conversations and then to go out and be great engineers, to be great bankers, to be great parents, right? Because that's the particular way that God has wired us to glorify him. We don't necessarily have to do the deep theologizing about it all the time, but we should be having that conversation some of the time, even though it can lead us to some deep waters and even some kind of intimidating places theologically and spiritually.
So to
unpack that.
Yeah, let's
unpack it.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. So to go back to this movie and even thinking about the transformation between the young driver, Joshua, who he made his life or his racing all about fame, attention, trying to win, trying to be the best. That's what it was about. And then he realized, oh no, it's just about the racing. And so I think for us as followers of Jesus, we've got to wrestle with, well, what is my life all about? And when it's off track, what does that mean? What does that look like? And so if we just take kind of any area of our lives where it becomes so self-centered and it becomes about the wrong things, and we know what the wrong things are, especially as we read God's word. But if our life is all about me, success, money, attention, then it's misguided. It's a misguided motivation, because what am I waking up every day driven by? If I'm just driven to be more successful, make more money, be more known by people, then I'm missing out on what my life really could be about, which is about enjoying God, bringing God glory, experiencing his glory, experiencing his love in everything I do, serving others, and making my life about other people and how I can bring God's love to them, how I can bring God's glory into their lives by the way that I treat them, by the way that I live and love and all of that. And so what is your life about? And then, the other questions, why are you here? What are you doing here? And so if God's created you, he's still giving you breath and a heart that's pumping. He's got purposes for you. He's the one that decided, okay, I'm going to make you and I'm going to put you here on earth for this amount of time. He's got things in store for us, things that he's designed and created and willed to happen. And so let's participate with him in those things to make our life about what he's about. I think there's a book called About My Father's Business. So, and it's about a workbook about kind of how you live your work life. Let's be about what God is about. So instead of being about what I'm about, what the world's about, what the sinful world is about, the sinful nature is about, let's be about what God's about. And so we have to get to know him. We have to know his word and ask him to empower us and keep our minds, renewed and focused on what he's about and what his purposes are.
Yeah, that's exactly. I mean, all of us have this sort of seemingly bottomless desire in our hearts for, again, the word I would use for it is glory, but we could call it different things like joy, meaning,
why,
the big
purpose.
why, purpose of, yeah, exactly. And so much, I mean, really what idolatry is. So many of our sin struggles and our idols come from trying to pour something created, something in the world into that deep, deep hunger in us for glory, right? And that will never work. It may feel like it's working for a little while, but that space in your heart that is meant for the glory of God can't be filled permanently by anything else, right? And so a lot of what we're talking about here is recognizing this is what my life is about, and I go to God for glory and for meaning first, and then ask him to refract that glory into different places like my work life, my family, the various responsibilities and contexts that he has me in throughout the week, right? So I love that idea of being about my Father's business, right? That implies that you know your Father, that you're going to him for your purpose and your meaning, and then he is commissioning you out into the world to live for his glory in the ways that specifically apply to your life. And I would say even sort of the rhythmic pattern of gathered Sunday worship and dispersed mission throughout the week reflects this, that we come together to be reminded of God's glory and his goodness, to enjoy him and worship him, and then filled up with his meaning and with his joy, we're sent out into the world to give that away to others, to disperse that throughout the world. That has been our design as humans made in his image from the beginning, to come to him to be filled with his glory and to go out to pour his glory out into the world. And so you're exactly right. There are some specific things that the Bible tells us about this, and we have to be coming back to God over and over again to be reminded of what's true and to be refilled by his meaning, his mission, his love, and his glory in our lives. If you try to fill that space in your heart with anything else, it's not going to work for long. Right?
And I think the question, why am I doing this, whatever that is an important question to ask. And very just practically, personally, I'll throw this out there. So, here at Unpacking It, we have a ministry called Fantasy Football Fellowship. And so am I playing fantasy football just to have an imaginary football team that I'm trying to beat my friends and brothers and be better than them every week? Is that why I'm playing fantasy football? Well, I've had a change of heart, and God's given me this passion and vision for Fantasy Football Fellowship, that I want to play Fantasy Football Fellowship or play fantasy football with the purpose of building relationships meeting with other guys every week. So I'm in 2 different leagues. We meet every week to talk about God's word and experience fellowship, genuine fellowship together. So now all of a sudden, why am I playing fantasy football? To grow in my faith, to pour into others, and to build meaningful relationships. And so we can do this with whatever activities that we're doing. I think it's important for us as parents, like, why are our kids doing this activity?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What is the point? What are we doing? Wait, why are we so busy? What are we doing here?
Yeah.
So some of these questions, it's like, wait, is this necessary? Well, why are we doing this? So some of the simple, practical, day-to-day questioning, I think, is also good, as we also, reflect on the deep, meaningful, glory, purpose type questions as well. And so, can I play fantasy football for God's glory? I would say yes. I know there's people out there that laugh at that and think fantasy football, what a waste of time. Yeah. Well, you guys can go do whatever. But but I believe, you could bring glory to God by the way you play fantasy football, by actually connecting with others in your league, caring about them, coming alongside of them when they're going through tough times in life. Was just talking, I just reached out to 2 guys today in my fantasy league. Hey, what do you need prayer for? They're in my life group year round, but anyway, so that there's ways that we can, whatever we're doing can bring God glory, and have purpose if we're aware of it.
Yeah. And just to encourage people, discovering this and applying it in your life is a journey.
That's right.
Right. It's not just a kind of switch that you can just flip overnight and all of a sudden be living for his purposes in every area of your life. And so I think, there seem to be like times in our life, and often I think the first time we really start to think about like the big why of my life, like what is the meaning of my life, what is the purpose of me, is usually kind of around like our high school and college, like our teenage and 20s years. And we come up with all sorts of answers to that question. Some of them good if we're doing that in sort of conversation with God's word and with the body of Christ. And also we come up with lots of bad or incomplete answers to that question. And then what happens, I think, often is you kind of go out and you sort of, you take your best crack at it. And the fallen world that we live in, that's full of toil and frustration and disappointment, it hurts us and distorts us in all sorts of ways. And I know there are a lot of men in their middle ages who it has hurt them to ask the question, what did I think that my life was about? And now, 45 years old, 50 years old, what is it actually about day to day? And going back and asking those questions can feel painful and scary. And in some ways, I kind of think that's what's going on with Brad Pitt's character in this F1 movie, right? And his sort of counterpart, Javier Bardem, the owner of the team, is like, we're still searching for something. And have we found it, or will we ever found it? And so what I want to encourage the people who are listening with is don't say to yourself, okay, snapping my fingers, flipping this, from now on, I'm living for God's glory in every area of my life. This is a gradual process that happens in the context of conversation. And you can begin to ask God and other people, what does it look like to take a small step for your purposes today, right? I mean, I just know there are people out there who have like their 9-to-5 jobs. They don't necessarily find a lot of fulfillment or purpose in them right now. And it is going to be a process to reconnect your career to the kingdom of God, but don't be afraid to step into that process. And don't be surprised if you experience some frustration and some struggle at the beginning of that process. That's totally natural. And it doesn't mean that you're doing something wrong. It actually means that you're stepping into something really courageous. You're asking the right questions that maybe you've been afraid to ask for a while. And it is true that in a fallen world corrupted by sin and filled with toil, we won't get a perfect experience of living for our absolute purpose in God in this life, but we can start to get little tastes and experiences, and we can start to see stories and previews of that in this life, and that is well worth living for the service of others, for the glory of God in your vocation. It is well worth asking that question. So don't be afraid to ask it and to step into it, but step into it free from the sense that you've got to have it figured out 3 days from now, right? It's a journey that you're going to be on for the rest of your life with the Lord, and that's a good thing.
in some ways,
you'll find it.
Some of those.
What I hear you saying, Bryce, is that you've gotten a clear idea of that in your own life, and I think you would say that was a process. But like you will find some real fulfillment in understanding your meaning in this life. So I don't want to set that aside and say that doesn't matter at all.
But then I faced the battle of, well, no, I'm playing fantasy football so I can beat my brothers.
That's right. Yeah.
Like
you lose sight of that meaning all the time. Yeah.
You lose sight. And so that's why we have to kind of go back to these questions. And so a couple of things in my life that have been impactful, just little kind of sayings or realizations that I've experienced throughout my life. One, at one of my grandpa's funerals, he wrote something down that he wanted to share. Somebody shared, I forget who read it. Maybe the pastor read it, but he talked about the difference that he realized between success and significance. Success and significance. And so I think that's one of those questions too, is like, am I chasing success or significance? This is significant in regards to the kingdom of God and his purposes. This matters to God. This matters in the long run. Or is this just about my personal success? So I think that's something that's crucial. The other thing is, as we talk about living for God, my life is about God. Absolutely. For God, but then I also somewhere along the way learned we can't forget with God.
Right.
That it's for God, but it's with God. We're in this in a tight relationship and fellowship with him, union with God. And so we are participating with him in his purposes, in his plans, and in his will. And so let's every day just be aware of that and join him. All right, God, what are you up to? What are you doing? I want to be a part of that. I want to be involved in that. I want to be used by you. I want to be a vessel for you. And then the other thing, I think I shared this a couple weeks ago after my men's retreat, but I just felt the Lord reminding me or telling me that he didn't create me for unpacking it. He created me to be a child of God, to know him, to be known by him, to experience his love.
Yeah.
And out of that, yes, he called me and designed me to do unpacking it. But that's not first. That's not the most important thing. My life is about knowing God and making him known. And that plays out in the unique ways that he designed me within the context of unpacking it.
Yeah.
Could he do it in other ways? Yeah. But this is sort of the specific way that he's called me. So I think there are, whatever you're uniquely designed and your experiences and the relationships that you have, God can use you in those ways to accomplish his purposes and give you that why and give you that excitement for knowing, wait, why am I here? What is my life about? Oh yeah. To be known by him, but then also to live out this role within the kingdom of God.
Yeah.
Within his purpose and call on my life.
That's so good, man. Yeah, that's so good. I mean, we're all made for relationship and purpose with God, relationship and adventure with God. But I think what the Bible consistently says is that the purpose always flows down from the relationship, right? The communion with God comes before and is necessarily prior to co-mission with him. So my little kind of mantra that I've come up with for myself, just to help me remember that, is very similar to yours, Bryce. It's with before why. With Jesus, it's always with before why. We see over and over again in the book of Acts, the apostles are going around and they're doing different things, but what people say about them repeatedly in the book of Acts is they saw that these men or these people had been with Jesus, right? So they had been with him in such a way that they were starting to do the things that he did, right? And that's going to be the same. That the same is going to be true for you and me. But I love your kind of your larger point there, Bryce, that it's good just to have these little milestones and Ebenezers along the way, these anchors where we remember, like, here's an important truth that I learned at this time in my life, or I heard from this more kind of seasoned follower of Jesus than me. And I'm amazed how often those happen at funerals, right? In my position as a pastor, I get, and I'll call it the opportunity, right? Because it is an opportunity to be at more funerals than the average person. And you hear at people's funerals, here's what so-and-so's life was all about, right? So as we think about that question, well, what is it all about? there's going to be a testimony that your life leaves behind as to what was Tripp's life all about. What was Bryce's life all about? I remember hearing I won't say his name, but a pretty big Christian speaker a number of years ago say, think about your funeral and actually think about the eulogy that you would like someone to give at your funeral, and then distill that eulogy down to about 3 words. And he's like, he argued, he's like, you really don't get more than that. You might have kind of 2 or 3 things that people are going to say, this is what his life was all about, and start to slowly but surely reverse engineer the way that you live each day with that sort of moment in mind. What would I like for people, my wife, my spouse, my kids, my church community, my neighbors, what would I like for them to say that my life was all about when I'm gone, when I move on to glory one day? And I think it's a really great way to get some clarity about what you want to be about each day.
It's great. It's great. The one last thing that, of course, is biblical, but hopefully all of this is rooted in truth.
So. Yeah.
But no, just love God, love people. So why am I here? To love God, to love people. What am I supposed to do today? Love God, love people. What is my life all about? Love God, love people. And so that's what it boils down to. And so I think when we get so caught up in, oh no, what am I supposed to do? What's going on? Why am I doing this? All right, well, is it rooted in loving God and loving people? It's usually a good place to start. And then one last thing, just to share another verse. The book of Ecclesiastes is this search for meaning and understanding what life is all about. And so most likely authored by King Solomon, but the writer in Ecclesiastes 12:13, basically experiencing everything, and this is all that there is in life, boils it down to this: when all has been heard, the end of the matter is fear God, worship him with awe-filled reverence, knowing that he is Almighty God, and keep his commandments, for this applies to every person. So what am I doing here? What am I all about? Well, worship God, fear him properly and in awe, and wonder, and going, God, I'm surrendered to you. You're the creator. You're the one who made me and gave me purpose. And what do you want me to do? And then obey that and understand his word and obey that. And now we understand why we're here, what we're doing. And so that, I think, is another kind of element to this framework of, wait, why am I here? What am I doing?
Yeah. That's called getting back to the basics.
That's
right?
it. Yeah.
That's what the point I was trying to make earlier is that it is sort of possible to spiral down into some of the complexities of these considerations.
That's right.
In such a way that you just get discouraged or worn out or kind of debilitated. And when that happens, just go back to the basics.
That's it.
Love God, love people. We have in my sort of church tradition that I grew up in, the first question in our kind of catechism, our shorter catechism, is, what is the chief end of man? What is the purpose of people? It's to glorify God and enjoy him forever. I was made to worship him and enjoy him. And if I keep coming back to those basics, and then the second is like it, love your neighbor as yourself, right? Which is what I hear you saying, Bryce. So yeah, think deeply about these subjects, and then don't be afraid to come back to the basics and the fundamentals too.
That's right.
That's good.
That's right. And then 1 Corinthians 10:31. So whether you eat or drink or whatever you do it all for the glory of God. And so that's what we're talking about today too. So it's like whatever we're doing, we can do it for the glory of God when we have the right perspective and heart posture, and we're relying on him, looking to him, allowing him to just shine through us and make it about him in whatever we're doing, to represent him well, to honor him well. So I hope that you're willing to sort of unpack some of these questions. Why are we here? Why do we do this? What is it about? What are we doing here? Some of the questions that popped up in the movie F1. It was a fun movie. It's worth a long watch. So encourage you to check it out. And while you're doing it, think about some of these questions in your own life. So I hope that this is encouraging to you. And man, that was fun.
Yeah.
Great recommendation on the movie.
I enjoyed watching this movie and enjoyed this conversation, because this is a great theme that runs through the movie. So, and just a great example of how good movies like this can tee up good conversations between friends and brothers in Christ too.
Amen. Absolutely. Next week, we'll wrap up our summer sports movie series with the movie Invincible. So you've got the man crush on Brad Pitt. Mark Wahlberg is next.
He's pretty cool.
He's next.
Yeah, he's
next
got some
week.
swag too.
So we'll have some fun with that one. I've already been thinking about movies for next summer, but I am open to suggestions. So as a listener, if you want to recommend a movie we should unpack next summer, let me know. I'm already excited about it. I already put it on the calendar. I can't wait. So I know when we're going to, Lord willing, when we're going to start it. So this is a fun series for us. I hope it's fun for you as a listener. But for Trip Smith, I'm Bryce Johnson. I'm a sports fan who follows Jesus. I believe in the good news that he died on the cross for my sin. He was resurrected. And through faith, I've been saved by his grace. I hope that is true for you as well. And I hope you'll let me know if it's not and you're curious, you want to talk about it. And I hope you'll join me as we live life as sports fans who follow Jesus together. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk to you next time right here on the Unpacking It podcast.